Hey, what's up everybody? Today I'm going to show you how to do some advanced coloring like you saw at the beginning of the video, and it's pretty easy. And I'm going to start by using some original sketches I made. I'm going to try and make this Mario parody cartoon, and let me go ahead and just import my sketches real quick. So I tried a lot of different styles, and I'm going to go ahead and make vector images of some of these characters, of the ones I really like, and then we'll get started coloring. So I'm going to go fast forward through this part, and we'll get to the advanced coloring here in a second. Okay, so I've turned my sketches into vector artwork, and I did some basic coloring. And now what I'm going to do is adjust the line work a little bit, and then we'll go ahead and start doing the advanced coloring. So what I did for all of these is I just filled them in like normal. And to do that, let me show you real quick. So I had the shapes drawn like this, and I hit U, and then I selected a skin tone and a stroke color, and then just hit spacebar to fill it in. That's what I did for the entire character, or both the characters. And now I'm going to use the hide edge tool just to hide some of the edges of Luigi's nose. So I'm going to cut and paste this so his nose is on the very top. I'll hide this edge here on his lips, and create a stroke here and here on his ear. Then I'm gonna hit W, and I'm just gonna make some of the lines a little bit thicker by clicking and dragging on them, and tapering some of them, like the nose, and maybe make part of it thicker, just to give the line width a little bit of variation. It just looks a little better when it's kind of varied like this. Make this thicker. Taper the edge of his mouth. Maybe make the lines a little bit thicker on his eyes. Taper at the bottom. Do the same for his eyebrows. Some of the lines on his hair. Like that. We'll do that with part of his hat too. Make some of these lines a little bit bigger. And that should be about it. Let me hide the lines here for his hair. Oh. Make a nostril real quick. Fill that in with black. I think that should be okay. And there we go. We'll do the same with Mario real quick. Hit W and just change the line width on some of the artwork. Some of it thicker. Maybe I'll hide the edges here on the top of his nose. Oops. Move that. I think I might hide these edges too. Kind of got a shadow cast on his nose already. And taper his mouth a little bit. Some of the ear lines. Some of these lines on his hat thicker. Okay, there we go. So if I do a Command R and render it, It's very flat, basic looking characters, which looks good. I mean, I think they look really good. But we're gonna do a little bit of shading. So first thing I want to do is I'm gonna create a new vector layer. I'm just gonna call this color blend, just so you guys can see exactly what I'm talking about. We'll go ahead and turn off the artwork for just a second. So I'm gonna draw a square. I'll draw a red square here. Oops, let's turn the fill on, autofill. And then I'll draw another square next to it. I'll hit Q, select it, and we'll turn this yellow. And right now they're just solid colors. But if you double click this layer and change the blur radius, I'll just type in like 11 and hit apply. It doesn't look like it did anything, but I'll do a Command R to render. Now you can see everything's starting to get blurry, and right in the center you can see that it's starting to turn orange. And if I double click on the layer and turn the blend radius way up, let's do like 77 and apply. Now if I do a Command R, you can see the colors really start to blend together, and that's kind of the technique that we're going to use to do some shading and highlighting. But the other thing that I do is I turn down the transparency of the colors that I'm using. So if I hit Q and I select the red and then I select the fill, and then I just turn the opacity down to about halfway to make it see-through. Do that, and I'll do that with the yellow also. Click on the fill, turn that down halfway. And you see when you overlap them, the colors are blending to create orange already. And let me double click on the we'll turn the blur radius down back to 11 and apply and render that. You can see they're starting to blend together a little easier, and again, the higher up I go back to 77, you get this really nice coloring. But a lot of it is playing with the amount of blur that you're adding to your artwork. So I'll hit OK and render that. 44 looks really good. Let's draw one more square. I'll hit S. I'll draw one more square here. I'll hit Q and select that yellow square and select blue. And you can see when that's overlapping the yellow, let's pull that yellow square out some. And make this blue one. So you can see we really only have red, yellow, and blue squares right now. But if I overlap them just a little bit and then render it, Command R, we get this nice, really nice rainbow color effect. And so that's one of the things that we're going to be using. And then also the reason that I do the transparency is because I want to use the same colors. So if I do a red square and draw really big, and let me hit Q, I'm going to turn the opacity down a little bit more just so it's a little more obvious, and hit OK. And then I hit S again and draw another square. When it's overlapping itself, it becomes darker and darker. So I keep overlapping it, and wherever it's overlapping, if I hit Command R, it's just going to create a natural gradient to wherever it's being overlaid, which is really good. And you can use color points. I can't remember if it's version 11 where we started being able to use color points, but the reason I like using this technique is because I can get curves and things like that without having to do a whole lot of work. So if I painted with the blob brush this kind of red squiggly line, and then I selected it and copied and pasted and moved it over and adjusted, maybe made it a little smaller, then did that again. And of course I could move these points over each other. But you get these really nice kind of blending of the same color. So let's do Command A. I'm going to go ahead and delete all that. So let's turn on Luigi and Mario again. And I'm going to just rename this color blend to Shadows. And what I'm going to do is, well, first thing I'm going to do is create a new group. You don't have to use groups, but this way I can use a mask so I can actually cut off some of the shading that I'm making. So I'm going to drag the artwork into this folder. I'll double click it, turn on masking, and click hide all and apply. And that's not going to do anything right now, but we're going to go ahead and add a new vector layer. And we're going to put, we'll call it shadows, and we'll drag that inside of our folder. And you can see it's got this little circle in here, half white, half black circle. That just means it's being masked. So when I create a new shape, I'm going to use their skin color. I'll use the color picker and I'll pick that color in their face. Let's turn it up for a second so you can see what's happening. So I wanted to pick the color of the face because I want to pick a color that's really similar in skin tone to it. So it automatically shows me what color it is, and now I can click a darker color and hit OK. And I'll hit S and I'll draw shape, and you can see it's only overlapping my character. When it goes off of it, it's not being seen. But I'm going to hit Q. I'll select it, and I'm going to go ahead and turn this color down, turn the opacity down so you can actually see through it. And hit OK. And let's start off with his nose. I'm going to go ahead and move some of these points. Oh, and I'm also going to change the layer blending mode. The layer blending mode is just going to change the way colors react with one another in between layers. So if I do a Command R right now, you see it's the same exact color as what I picked. But if I put double click shadows and change the layer blending mode to normal, or I mean multiply, and apply, it's actually going to add on to or multiply this color on top of the skin tone. So when I render it, it's a little bit darker. So we'll go ahead and I'm going to shape the shadow of the nose kind of how I want. It doesn't have to be really perfect. I just want to kind of get the rough shape of it. Like this. I'm hitting A to add new points, and then T to move them. Oops, add a new point here. I'm going to make the shadow go around his eye. Like that. Adding some more points. Like that. Make this curve. Okay. So I'll double click it. And I'm going to change the blur. Let's type in 11 and apply that. And we'll do a Command R to render. Now you can see that we've got this nice kind of shading going on here just from that blur. And the blur is not going to go off our picture because we've set it to mask. So let's go ahead and hit S again, and we'll draw another square on top of that. And I'm just going to add some points and overlap what I've just made. Again, kind of rough. Don't really need it to be super good because it's being blended. Let's move that there. So you don't have to get too fancy with the let's render that. Now you can see where I've done this second shape, it's a little bit darker. And if you want to, you can even make a different color. I can hit Q, select it, go up to fill, and maybe make it a little bit darker even. And then render it. And then you can see that we've gotten this nice kind of shading going on. So let's go ahead and keep doing that with the skin color. Let's go underneath the lip. We'll just draw a square. I'll go ahead and drag some of this off the character because it's being masked out. I can draw another one like that. Maybe select that color and make it darker like that and render. And I'm going to keep rendering just to kind of check to see how the character is looking. And let's go ahead. Put one over here. This will just be, we'll just put it around his ear a little bit and up on the back of his head. And because it's on multiply, it should make the brown of his hair darker as well. Let's go ahead and move this up. Yeah. So see, the masking is making it cut off so it doesn't show any brown over here on the side of the head. And you can keep on playing with this and adding as many shapes as you want, but keep in mind also that just with any other program, 3D program or animation program, the more effects you use, like blurring or particles, it can take longer to render, but you can animate this these shadows and highlights as well. So that's the basics of the shadows. Let's go ahead and do another vector layer, and we'll do highlights. And this time we're going to select white, or close to it. Well, actually, let's go ahead and select the skin tone. So use the eyedropper. We'll come over here, select the skin tone, and then we'll select a color that's near white. We'll turn the opacity up for a second just so you guys can see. So I'll hit OK. So it's really close to white, but it's still that skin color. And I'll go ahead and hit S. And I'm just going to draw, let's draw a circle at the tip of the nose. So we'll do that. I'll do Command R just to check to see what it looks like. And right now it's solid, which is a cool effect. I mean, if you want it to look like that, kind of cell shading, you could leave it like that, or you can double click. And this time we're only going to blur it a little bit. So let's do like 5 and see what that looks like. And render. Now that looks really good. It looks like an actual highlight of light. Highlight of light. You know what I mean. Let's go ahead and hit S, and we'll draw another circle or oval. This one I'm going to put on the bridge of the nose, so I'll hit C and kind of curve the edges out, or taper them. Then kind of put this on the bridge of the nose. And again, this all has to do with the amount of blurring and that you want on there. So now you can get this nice highlight on the edge of his nose. I'll actually move that over because the blur is actually pushing that color out a little bit. So we'll pull it back and render that. We can go ahead and put some on the forehead. And let's do Command R. That looks really nice. I like that. A little bit on the lips. Like that. And then I can even do, let's go ahead and do S. Let's draw another circle on top of the nose. I'll hit Q, I'll select it. I'm going to make it just white, plain white. And hit OK. And let's render that and see what that looks like. Now it makes the nose pop out just a little bit more. It's all about the subtlety of how much you use this, or you know, it's kind of just up to you how much you want to have it blend or not. I'll go ahead and put another white one here. And then another technique is to use gradients shading. So let's go ahead and go back to the shadows for a second. Say I want to put a shadow in his ear, but I want it to be, I don't want it to blur on every side. I'm going to go ahead and hit S. I'll draw a circle. I hit Q. I'll select that color, and we'll go ahead and use the color picker and just pick that shadow color that we made at the beginning. And I'm going to kind of put these points around his ear. And then we're going to create a little bit of gradient fall off. Okay, so this is just a little bit different. We're not going to, actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and, I'm going to select that shape. I'll cut it. I'm going to make a new layer. I'll just call it hard shadow. And this time I'll double click on it. There's no blur on it right now. And I'll go ahead and paste that back in there. So what I'm going to do is hit Q. I'll select it. And I'm going to go up to here where it says Effect and click Plane, and I'm going to go to Gradient. And, oh crap. What I wanted to do, here, let's get that shadow color. I'm going to click on it and see how this is the actual number assigned to that color. I'll go ahead and select it and do a Command C to copy. And then when we go back into the gradient, which is this little button with the 3 dots next to it, I'll select the black, double click it, and then I'm going to paste, Command V. So it turns it into that brown color. I'll hit OK. And I'm going to move it over to the side, and then if I click underneath this color bar, it's just going to make a duplicate color. And I'll delete the white. And then now we have a color bar that's fading from the same color of brown to one to the other. But we're going to make this one, we'll click on Allow Transparency, click on the Fill, and turn that down to nothing. So it fades from visible to invisible. Hit OK. Now you can't see it right now, but see it's got this red circle and clear circle. If I click off, you can see where the gradient is, and I can actually move that around. So wherever the white circle is where it's going to be dark, and then it's going to fade into completely clear. So we'll just adjust this like that, and then let's do Command R and render that and see what that looks like. Let's actually make that a little darker. Actually, I'll double click this, make this multiply, and maybe that'll help it. That's looking better, but maybe we will blur it just a little bit. I'm going to curve these edges out. And you can adjust this gradient at any time by hitting Q. And when you select it, you can actually move that gradient inside the ear or wherever it is on your head. So you can use this technique, and if you don't want to use the masking, you can do this as well. But I kind of, let me see how that looks. Okay, let's blur it a little bit. Double click, blur, maybe, let's do, not even 5, let's do 4. Apply. But see, when you blur it, the edge is disappearing, so I don't want to even blur it that much. Let's go ahead and let's only do 2. And let's go into the gradient, maybe make this brown a little bit lighter. And return. That color doesn't look right though. Maybe we'll just leave it as overlay. I can't remember if that makes it brighter or darker. It makes it brighter. We don't want that. Change this to normal multiply. I think multiply is the only one that makes it darker. Make it even lighter. Okay, we're just going to turn the opacity down. I think that'll fix it. Click on that, turn the opacity down of the entire layer. We'll do 70. Command R. That looks better. So you can see it goes from dark to light. And you can move that around however you want. And you might want to use that like under the lip. You see how it's blurred and going into the lip a little bit. But we can also go in here, select the shadows. I can hit Q and hold Shift down and select all of these colors and make them a completely different color. I can make them really dark brown. Hit OK. Render that. And that looks weird, but we can just mess with the opacity again. Let's turn that down to 70 and apply. And render that. Still a little too much. Let's go down to 40. Apply that. And you can see that it starts looking better and better. Let's do... I'll do another one on the ear. I'm just trying to get it really dark on this edge. Copy that. Oops. So we get this kind of edge. Let's do some more highlights. Go to the highlights. I'm gonna hit Q and select that original color that's a little bit lighter, or a little, just a tiny bit tan. And I'll draw a circle here, just on the edge of the ear. Just everything kind of to the left side of the head. Like that. And you can go to and do that same thing with the mustache and the hair and stuff like that. So like if I wanted to put some highlights in the hair, here, let me make this a little bit thinner. Or go like this. I'll copy and paste it. And then shrink it where it overlaps. Oops. And maybe even make that white so it's a little bit shinier. Render. That's a little too bright. So a lot of it's just really adjusting. Yeah, it looks okay. I mean, it's probably too bright. But again, adjusting the opacity of the layer and the opacity of the color itself is kind of key to doing that. Say you wanted to do something with the mustache. Let's go ahead and do another vector layer. And we'll call this highlights 2. And this time I'm gonna draw a circle on top of the mustache. I'll hit Q and select it. We'll go ahead and select, we'll just select a light yellow color. And you just play around with all the settings, especially the layer blending. So I'll show you what I mean real quick with this. This isn't going to look great, but I'm just making a few lines to make it look so you can kind of see what's going on. Like that. Okay, so if I do Command R, it's just these yellow lines. But if I do double click and change the can't talk. The blending mode to add and hit apply. Add actually will make everything that combines brighter. So if I hit OK and do a Command R, let's do this so you can see it better. I'm actually using too bright of a color. So like I said, add actually will make things brighter. So we can actually make this really dark. Let's make it a kind of darker brown, like this. And then do a Command R and render. And let me see if I can get this to work. It acts a little bit different than it does in Illustrator, which is where I started using this technique a long time ago. Let's see. Oops. Because it should, when it overlaps, get brighter and brighter. But it doesn't look like it's doing that. Let me see. It is not. Maybe we're just using the wrong color. Let's do a really dark. I'm holding down Shift after I hit Q. We're going to make it the same color as the mustache and hit render. So it is making it brighter, but I think maybe it has to be on a different layer altogether. Let's duplicate that. I'll do a Command A. Command A to move all that stuff. Okay, so in Illustrator, what it's doing is one layer is on top of the other, and wherever they're overlapping, it's getting brighter and brighter. So let me do this. Okay, here's our original layer. Let me just Command Z, go back to where you can see it. So here's our dark brown. Let's make it just a little bit lighter so we can see it. Okay. And then I'll duplicate that layer. And I'll move it just a little bit and render. So anywhere it's overlapping, it's getting lighter. But let's blur those. Let's blur this. And blur this layer as well. And now we're getting this nice kind of wherever it's overlapping, it's getting a little bit brighter. It's just making it a little bit textured looking. So that might be too bright. So let's go ahead and turn the opacity down. Let's go to 70 on this one, 70 on the second one. Now we're getting this kind of nice effect here. Let's do that in his hair as well. I'm gonna just draw. I'll just use a line. I'm gonna draw a line, hit U. We'll just do stroke. And we're gonna use the color picker to make it the same color. And I'm gonna taper it. I'll copy and paste it a few times. Let's see what that looks like. Let me render it real quick just so I can see. Okay, there's some lines there. Oops. And I'll copy and paste one more line. Let's put that there. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the highlights 2 or 3, whatever you want to call it. Use that same color. And remember when you add, so I'm gonna move this line across so it crosses the layer underneath and render. You can see where it's overlapping. It turns a little bit brighter. So let me do that again. I'll copy and paste this line too. And render that. And we get this kind of organic looking coloring. And that's really all there is to it. I'll go ahead and fast forward through this. I'll go ahead and color both of these guys real quick and show you the end result. If you guys have any questions or comments, just leave them down below. If you have any suggestions for any new tutorials, you can do that there too. And thanks again for watching.